Given the conversations about tariffs and trade wars and things like that, a lot of people say that Apple, for example, could be considered a proxy for what's going to happen in China. Does that make sense to you?
It depends on what regard. I mean, in terms of demand or in terms of,
In terms of how much is manufactured there, for example.
Right.
Obviously there's Foxconn and that piece of the business. Now they're using the iCloud servers in China.
In China, right.
Is that relationship ever become more complicated?
Look, I think the Apple element, and this is outside of my wheelhouse, I'm not in consumer goods, but what I will say is that I think if you look at Tim Cook back in the day when he was running the show as an operating officer, he did a great job with the supply chain building it in China. I don't think that there was a lot of long-term thought put into it of exactly what they're facing right now. We call this the Faustian bargain. I've gone in because I'm going to make a lot of money out of China without thinking about what does this mean longer term for me. And I think a lot of firms, this is coming home to roost right now.
And you think they're going to end up moving their manufacturing facilities out of China?
I think a lot of firms are going to have a lot of hard discussions internally that should have happened a long time ago.
And do you think that those manufacturing facilities, by the way, end up moving back to the United States? Do you think they move? We had the Brooks CEO here talking about actually we just go to Vietnam or we go somewhere else.
It sounds like, and I've heard a lot of people say this, sounds great on paper. Try to get that to happen. The favorite thing I had that came out this week was Foxconn going to Wisconsin.
Right.
Oh, you don't have enough people. We're going to bring the Chinese literally in to work in those manufacturing outlets. Yeah, that's not going to happen. But this is a very typical way that the Chinese have operated globally.
Meaning the United States is not going to let them import Chinese workers to take the jobs that were supposed to be going to American workers, which is why they got the tax breaks?
Well, I think that just the optics alone.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be even close to possible, no matter how many they can, actual employees they can find. But I think the ultimate idea is there is a groundswell and a shift about how to target China. And everybody, like I said, has gone through the process for so long without thinking really long term. And now we've got China.
Peter, are you arguing that you can help people maneuver through this system and that it doesn't need political change from the heads of state to be talking about this? Or are you arguing that there are gradations of what you can do in the existing system?
Well, I can tell you full stop that what I do on a daily basis is to bring global financial service companies into China and help them navigate what is possible. I'm trying to steer so many away from the cliff at the moment because they're hearing all of these negative elements of what's possible. We can't do this, we can't do that. So what we're trying to say is, look, there is a gray area. This is the way China operates. So you have to manage within that gray area.
If Larry Page called you tomorrow and said, look, we've been testing this service, we're thinking about going back into China, you would tell him what?
Yeah, please don't.
You'd say, please don't?
Yeah.
Why?
Because and this is just on the IT side of it, where their own homegrown internet is, and I deal with the internet there all the day, every day.
Right.
They would not be able to achieve what they think they can achieve with, the Chinese government would have a lot of demands on them. They wouldn't be able to negotiate now from a position of strength. So they're better off just, I think, sticking to what they do well in other markets that they're open to.
Right. Given all the companies that you've worked with, some of which I imagine have had IP issues and other things, my question to you is actually about Huawei and its connection to SoftBank. We've been talking a lot about Huawei as the telephone operator.
Right.
There's been people have said that Huawei is a national security risk, not just in China, but outside of China. Do you think of any of these Chinese companies that are coming to the United States, do you think we need to look at them in a different way than we do today?
I think we need to look at, I think the United States policy needs to look at not just Chinese, but all, I think, foreign tech companies in a similar way. I think what's happening right now is just, it's a great way to leverage up where President Trump is trying to negotiate with the Chinese to sort of, focus on, ZTE, Huawei, and all these other tech companies. But bear in mind, a lot of the technology so-called forced transfers over the last decade, I don't know how forced they were. These were actual companies that went in and said, we're going to do a joint venture with you. Here's our technology. The argument that we give to people all the time is, look, if you're iOS, right, you don't have to give them your latest version. If you have to bring in something to build a business, you give them version 5.0, not 13.2. So there are ways around what the Chinese are asking for. Oh, and here's the kicker. You can always say no. And this is what we tell clients all the time. Because there's an actual joke that goes along the lines of, The Chinese will ask the foreigners for everything because they might be dumb enough to give it to them. And that's what we're trying to stop groups from doing.